For my next project, I've selected a photographs and plans from this book here, The Pictorial Record of Great Western Engines by J.H. Russell, which is an invaluable guide, although it has some rather idiosyncratic text. So let me just get that out the way and let me show you. This is the next loco that I'm going to be building, and I'm going to be following it on YouTube in a series of videos explaining how I do this. Now I am going to be using bits and pieces from previous models because there's no point in reinventing the wheel. So where I have previous parts, such as certainly cab fittings, springs here, maybe the chimney, the dome, maybe the safeties, I shall be just using and adapting those, merging those in from previous models, but it will be basically a guide how to produce a model in Trainz, and that's the idea. Although I've done this before, I've had requests recently, so I'm going to do it all again with this particular locomotive. Now the first thing I did, and the first thing you should always do, is of course gather as many photographs from the net as you can of the intended prototype, and there are a whole series of these locomotives which eventually became, these are saddle tanks, but they became pannier tanks, the ubiquitous GWR panel tanks. So pannier tanks, let me just take that down a bit and show you. So this is the plan that I've scanned in from Russell's book, which I'm just going to get that out of the way. So this is the plan, and it's a scale plan. I've carefully scanned that in, and then what I've done is I printed it out and then measured, I actually measured the 7'4" in millimeters on the printout, and that gave me a scale of 1 millimeter on my printout, equaling 1.76 inches, and from that I was able to scale up. I was able to get a vertical height, although I've got a vertical height here. I was able to double check that with the vertical height here, because don't rely on these on plans like this, they can lead you astray. But it gave me the overall length, which I had more or less got by adding all these up, so it's always good to check that. And this is not quite the same as the photograph that I showed you here, because you'll notice on this one that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 sections to the saddle tank, which goes over the top of the boiler, and different versions of this particular arrangement of saddle tank in the Great Western Railway from the late 19th century through to the First World War. Different versions had different tank types, and the plan has just 3. So I'm going to mostly follow this, but then when I come to giving the detail to the tank, I'll have a look at the photographs and see which one is closest to the version that I want to model. And so this gives us also, this plan gives us a front view and a rear view, and very usefully a shape of the saddle tank. So having scanned this in, I've got it here, you can see plan JPEG. Then if I just take that down and show you, I'm now in Gmax, and I've got a whole series of textures which I've actually imported, because what I did was I took the cab from one of my previous models, so there it is, and I've actually deleted one of the textures, so that's why it's showing up in red. That was the cab lining, and this is of the Armstrong Goods 1089. But I wanted this for the cab details, which I'm just going to carry over, because they're more or less the same. They're sufficiently close as to be usable. So many of the textures that are here are brought into this model by merging this cab section. If I was to go back and show you the so we just say that this is the cab section of the 1089 Armstrong Goods. So you can see I've deleted that lining there because it's not suitable for the new model. But that's just sitting there. In fact, what I did with the Armstrong models is in the final model, the final model is actually made up of 4 groups of meshes. This is the mesh for the boiler section of the second version, the 1900s version, because it had this remarkable shape of firebox, and especially here where it's actually curved in and on the corners there. And I've just added some basic details, just enough to suggest the detail that was actually there. And also from this you can see that there's going to be a number of things which I can use, such as the springing and certainly the sandboxes, that sort of thing. So I shall just copy those into my new model. So here is my new model, 1076 class 060 saddle tank, 1076 version 1, my first startup. So what have I done? Well, ignore the fact that I've imported the cab, because that's just there in order to help me out with some detail. In fact, what I'm going to do, it was already been grouped. You can see there, group 1, and I'm just going to hide it because I'm going to bring in bits of it, but it doesn't really make much impact on how I start from scratch. It's just extra stuff I can bring in to save time. But by bringing that in, it did bring in a number of textures which I want: the boiler gauge, cab rivets, coal, the dial inside the cab, 2 dials, glass, gauge glass, and what I call shiny frames. Frames is a texture that the name of which I've used repeatedly since making models in Gmax, and it's simply a general catch-all title for quite a small texture, but which has quite a bit of detail in it, and I'll come to that later, because making the textures is as important as making the meshes. So I decided what I would do is I'd start off by using that plan, and you can see I've spread that plan across a number of planes. So the way I do this is, I know that this is 31 feet this way, actually 31 foot 3 inches, and it's 12 foot 8 1/8 of an inch high. So if we can have a look, that's a simple plane, a single face. It's got no back, got no thickness, got no sides, and there it is. There's the proportions. So that tells me that I've got a rectangle of that size from the top of the rail, so from the tyre of the wheel, not the flange, the tyre, up to the top of the chimney. And if I just make sure that the texture is correctly displayed, you normally keep texture correction off, it just slows things a little. But you can see there, that's the plan that I'll be using. That gives me the side view, or at least one side view, the left hand side view, port side, and then there's those 2 end views, the front view and the rear view, and then there's that scale plan of the saddle tank. Now it doesn't matter that it's not in the correct vertical position, but each of these, this is where you start from. You scan in the plan, and then once you have that, you then draw up a series of planes, give you the sort of bounding box or building box. And although it's sitting on the 0 x y 0 coordinates at the moment, what I will do is I will move it back, because it needs to be out of the way when I start building. These ones are already out of the way because the locomotive is going to be just that long. So what have I got here? Well, let's go in and have a look at that. So my first job, scan in the plan. Second job, create planes, individual planes, and those are available here over on the left. Okay, so if you click on plane, you can just draw it out to any size you like, and normally it comes up 4 by 4 segments. So you want that down to 1 by 1, and then you want that rotated up to 90 degrees because you want to be able to see it. And make sure you have this little radio button pressed in to make sure it moves in 5-degree increments. And then you need to know the height of your, so once you've set this to the correct height, once you've got your plane to the correct size, then you halve the height and raise it that amount. So half the height of 12 foot 8 and 125 64 point, well, it's actually 0625 would be correct to get it there. So that means what I've got here is the tire of the wheel, the bottom of the plane is sitting exactly on the 0 height position, and the top is exactly at 12 foot 8.125 inches. I always work in feet and inches. Then you need to do these, and again you look at your plan and you realise that we're actually told on one of them that this should be 8 foot 5 1/4 inches wide, and of course it has to be the same height as this plan here because we're looking at the end on plan, and this has to be at the same height as well to make sure the proportions are correct. But this one actually had to be 9 foot 1.12, and that's based on a measurement I made on the printout of the plan. I always print these plans out, so I've got it in front of me here, and the same is true here on the saddle tank. So in this first section, this is setting up for your model, and that should always be your first step. So now what I'm going to do is just hide some of the plans. Okay, now they're all still there. There we are. Look. Let's just take those, and then I'm going to go to the back view. It just works out that it's the back view, back, front, left, right. There's right over here, and then make that the main screen. And then what I've done is I've started to create the shape of the saddle tank. Okay, so I've made sure that my plan, the center line of the saddle tank, which is actually off at a slight angle there, and this is how it appears in the book, that's my center position down there, the center of the circle, and that circle is 4 foot in radius. So if we look at it over at the, I can't do that now because I've already converted it, but what I've got there is a circle 4 foot in radius, 8 foot in diameter. You can actually see these are 1 foot squares, so 1 2 3 4, there we are. Look, it's exactly at 8 foot. The actual height doesn't matter at the moment. The width is make sure it's centered on the 0 line and the width is correct. And then so that's that measurement there, which is highlighted on the plan. And then the internal circle I need is 2 foot 5 inches, and then I've got these, look, from these points moving out to 3 foot 4.5, but I don't really need those. These here, it said it was a circle of 6-inch radius, which is what I've done. And so if we switch off if we just go into the wireframe, that's where I've actually got part of the saddle tank done with as a circle, but I'm going to try something which I've not done before. So I've gone into this is where we are, the standard primitives, and then the splines, the second one in from there, circle, and then take it out to make sure it's a different color, contrasting color, and then take it out to 4 feet. So it should sit straight on top of this one, the upper one, X, Y, Z. So I've positioned it exactly on that one. This is the tool here for aligning. Okay, now there's one thing which I'm not all that mesh setting sides. Here we are. The sides that I had there, I thought that's a bit too clunky, and I want it a nice smooth one. So I'm going to immediately take that up to 32 and we'll see how that looks. Don't see much change there. Thickness is neither here nor there. So this is mesh settings. See an interpolation steps 6. Let's try and increase the number of steps. There we are. We get a much smoother finish, I think. There you can see a much more pleasantly curved. If I take the yellow one, which was my first go, away, and you can see we've got more steps. Now it's only going to be these ones here to here. This is all going to get deleted. So I think I'd like to take that up even further. And you normally want to work in multiples of 4 with a circle, so you get, because you're working on the quadrants, on a quadrant which is just a quarter of a circle there. So I'm going to take that up to 24. This will increase the mesh count, of course, because there's going to be a lot more polys created, but it's going to give you a much smoother finish than otherwise. Now you can see there that we've got the if I look at the overall, although the radius is to 8 foot, it doesn't actually, I mean, that drawing there isn't very precise, and I'm actually going to go to, well, it's going to be about 7 foot, about 4'10" each side. And the inner circle there, so if we just take this one and we'll turn this into the inner circle, I'll just align it on with the one that I just made, and I'm going to, I can't alter any of that. I don't think I can put the sides up, can I? Let me have that. No, at this stage I can't do anything on that. It's an editable spline at the moment, so I've changed it from being a circle to an editable spline. Yes, and it lets me do it in editable spline. I didn't know that, so I've learnt something myself there. However, what it doesn't do, of course, is let me alter the radius at all. So really what I should do there, this is still the circle. This has been converted to an editable spline, so I'm going to delete that. And I'm simply going to copy this one, and I'm going to give it a different colour so I can identify which one it is. And then if I look again at my plan here, oops, where are we? It should be 2 foot 5 inches. So this time, because it's a circle, and I know I've got the yellow one selected, look, there's the colour showing up, and I'll take that down to 2 foot 5 inches. That's the thickness. So change that back. There's the radius, 2 foot 5 inches, and they're not concentric, these circles. In other words, this one is higher, so if I take that up to there, that's going to give a much better effect than the spline that I had there before. I'm going to take that out. And these here are similarly, these are 6-inch circles, so let's make those. There we are, and the radius 6 inches, and remember we want interpolation is going to be 24, so there's going to be, now I'm not too worried about the size of those, the number of meshes that's going to make, because I want it to look, I want it to be an effective, smooth finish. Sometimes if you're not careful with the, I just deleted the other bits and pieces of splines there. So I'm just cloning this one, bringing it across so it touches. There we are. And I'm just deleting that one, and then I'm going to clone this. Edit, clone. So that's another way. The previous way I was just holding down the shift key, and then I'm going to move it on the x-axis, so the same measurement but not minus that way plus this way. So again, clone this one. That means I get an exact parallel, an exact copy. Now we've got an awkward position there, but that's going to have to be resolved with a bit of adjustment. So let's turn that. So this is quite a complicated shape otherwise. So what I've done is I've broken it down into the two pieces, two lines there, which are actually parts of a circle, and then we've got 4 other lines there which are also parts of a circle. But of course I don't want all of the parts of the circle, so what I should do now is convert all of these into splines. That, by the way, is the outline of the plane with the details of the design on it, just to show you. There it is. So with this, that is currently a circle. I'm now going to convert it to an editable spline. There we go. And now that means it's made up of a whole series of segments, 4 segments. I'll take those 2 away, we don't need them. And similarly with these circles, convert to spline. Don't convert to a patch or a poly or anything else. It's the spline that's the most useful form at this stage. We're going to extrude the whole thing eventually, and spline, and then segment, and then same here, spline, and then delete unnecessary segments. So you can see we're following the shape of that saddle tank. It's such a distinctive shape. I wanted to start with it. Normally I would start, when making the model, I'd start with the wheels, but I decided to start with the saddle tank on this one. Okay, so we're beginning to get there. I need to join up these sections, and the way I tend to do that is by choosing another spline, a rectangle. You can draw a line, but I've never found it very successful. So there we are. Let's make sure we've got that in the correct position. Needs to zoom right in using the mouse wheel, and take that there so that it's exactly in position. And again, spline, and then this time vertex. It means that I can refine. Where are we? Refine, there we are. I can insert vertices on that line. There's one in there, one's going to go in there. I know they're not exactly in position at the moment, but that's neither here nor there, doesn't matter at this stage. And then turn off refine, go to the segments, which is the area between those vertices, and delete all the bits that you don't need, which actually for this is quite a lot. There we are, and we're just left with a single piece, but with 4 vertices. So with those, I then just make sure they're in position, joined up, butted up hard against my model. There we are. And over here a little bit more. Worth planning out. So this is just positioning the vertices so that they line up. So we've got the base there, and now I need to sort out this junction here on each side. So first of all I'm going to lose, well, first of all I want to have a look at that. Yeah, we just got to curve it in a bit. So we go back to wireframe. and I'm going to hide that plan, and I'm going to convert this to a editable spline, and then I want to put in a spline point at exactly where that's going to come in. So the way I do that is I make a guide. I put in a guide for myself. I just simply create a box. I'm only going to use this to get the position right. I'm going to drop that down. There we go. And position it straight where that is going to be. And that means now I want to put in a spline point, vertex, more or less on the line. It will move. There we go, but don't worry about that because I'm going to correct that. And over here, do the same. Okay, and that now means I can edit this large circle. I can remove segments because I've now got segments between all of those vertices. So take out the 4 that I don't need at all, and then let's adjust those vertices. First of all, bring it down onto the line and then along. So I'm switching between moving in only the Y or X axis all the time, and you've really just got to get used. The more you do, the better you'll get at it. And so I'm highlighting there, making sure that the Y axis is highlighted, bring it down, position it onto the line, there we are, and then take the X axis highlighted, move it along until it's in the correct position. And what that has done is it's slightly adjusted the curve, and we're going to have a look at that in a moment when I get to the when I turn the plan back on. Okay, so these bits clearly need a bit of tidying up as well, so let's pick these up. That's no good, so go back there. Again, yes, there it is. So that needs to come over here on the x-axis, and the same on this one. So that gets into position then. Remember, that means we'll be out here. So this one, I need to alter that vertex. Just bring it along a little bit. And the same will be true here. There it is. Pick it up. Move it over. Good. So at the moment we've got all sections of vertices, and I can delete that. Can I delete that? No, I can't, because what I've got to do is put vertices in here. And this editable spline, let's just look, see where we are. Make sure I've got the right one highlighted. And I'm going to put a vertex in here. Get that position just right. And down here. Okay, then let's just adjust those back into their correct position. So first of all the Y, adjust the Y please, and you notice that I move the cursor over to the right a bit, just so I can see the line. Okay, I'm actually being far more careful than I normally am, just to demonstrate how I would approach this. And here again the y-axis, and then the x across, So I think we've got more or less the outline, but let's double check, because we need to unhide, and I think it's probably the fourth plane that the group is that cab stuff. Yeah, that looks right. Just make sure, yes, you see we're a bit out there. It's not too bad on that curve. Now these curves are the same, it's just the way in which this diagram is drawn. So let's just wireframe it. Now I can see just by looking at the way it intersects that it is correct. So that side is correct, so therefore that side must be correct. So I'm not going to change that at all. Instead what I'm going to do is I'm then going to join these splines, so attach, and you'll see they're all turning to white as I attach them. See if there's anything else to attach. There must be. And it's all taken the colour of the first one that I started with. So let's have a look at the vertices. There's lots there. Now I would weld them one at a time just to be absolutely sure, but that's effectively what you're doing, you're joining them together. I can see an issue, a couple of issues. Okay, so that's the welding, and then here though, I think I'm okay there. Let's try that. Weld. Weld. No. So what has happened here is this, I think, is in the wrong position. Let's just try moving that about. So what's the problem there? Let's have a quick look here. Sometimes what happens is that they're not all on the same axis. But we definitely want those to join up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring, if there's two, or sometimes I've had even three, I'm just going to bring that down. I'm going to take this one up. And move it over. Yes. And once more. There we are. So you want to be careful to make sure you've got all of these tidied up. It's going in the wrong direction. Need to go up to the Y. Take that up. And move it across. Yes, and again weld. There we are. So that's the outline of the saddle tank, and if I just show you now that we've got it, what I'm going to do first is save this, and then I'm going to use that to extrude, and hopefully it's going to look like, let's make a 10-foot long one. This is just to show that it's working. There we are, and that's our saddle tank. And it's nice and smooth there. We'll take a nice texture, and the boiler of course will go underneath it. So let's unhide everything, and if I go to the side view, then you can see here that saddle tank is in the wrong position. That doesn't really matter at this stage. But if I take that up, I think we're okay there. And I take it right the way along because it goes right the way up to the smoke box door. And let's make it 20 foot long. Too much, 18, whatever. It doesn't really matter at this stage, but you can see that if I was then bring in the cab, which is not the cab, the correct cab, of course. This is cab from one of my other locos. Just by way of demonstration, if I was to bring that, not that way, if I was to bring that in this way, then already we've got the we've got the beginnings of the shape of a 1076 class Buffalo 060 saddle tank, and something that's going to eventually become the cab once I've ripped it apart and redone it. So I hope that's been of help. That's the first of my how to make the 1076 class Buffalo, and the next part will be making the wheels and animating them. So I'm going to finish that video just by giving you that last look. Let's take it up. There we are. First stage of our new 060 ST saddle tank.